Czech Center for Investigative Reporting and Dark Riviera present Protagonista, a war room content project hosted by Pavla Holcová. Protagonista puts investigative reporters at the heart of the story. Anna Babinets, Ukrainian investigative journalist, had to become a war reporter overnight when the Russian Federation invaded her country. Anna talks about the impossibility to stay impartial and how she became an activist, helping kidnapped children return from Russia. You have a story of Masha and Nastya, two girls you saved from enforced exile in Russia, or to put it more clearly, two girls kidnapped from Ukraine to Russia. How this story developed? How did you find out the kids who were kidnapped?
We figure out that it was some in Kherson, it's big city. It was some places where very small kids, like under 1 year kids, who were just their mom left them, in hospitals.
Abandoned kids.
Yeah, abandoned kids. And Russians just put all of these kids before the occupation. And one of our journalists, she found on Instagram some Ukrainian kids who were stolen right before, in 1 week before the occupation, because Russian knew that they will left the territories in the south. They organized kind of camp in Crimea for kids from Kherson.
It's kind of a summer camp?
Yeah, so they said you just leave and go for Crimea. Crimea is a nice place, also occupied by Russians for a long time, but it's very nice place with the sea, with good nature. And that kids, I'm talking about two girls, like they were 16 and 17 years old, and they decided to go to Crimea for 2 weeks. That what Russians said, and all documents were saying that in 2 weeks they will come back.
Yeah, just take a break from the war and have a good time.
Yes, it looked like that. Their parents agreed, but then after 1 week, territories were deoccupied, and Russians told them, no, you're staying here. It's not safe for you to come back to your home, to your parents, to Kherson. You should stay here.
And they wanted to stay or not?
They didn't. They tried to find any way to come back home, because they have parents there, they had friends there, and they really wanted to be in Ukraine. And then we found out that it was a lot of cases.
So the place was everything but some kind of a summer camp. So how did it look there, and what was the most challenging part of the stay of the girls there?
It was like dormitory, mostly dormitory, but without heating. It was pretty cold there.
So we are talking, let's say, December, November, in a dormitory, without any heating.
Yeah, and we asked them to film their conditions of living, and there was no water. They could take shower only once per week.
Once per week?
Once per week they got hot water for 2 hours or something like that.
They also were kind of re-educated to start to speak and write in Russian and to start to listen to Russian anthem and pretty much becoming Russian. So what was the plan with the Russians, with those kids that were brought there? To make them Russians?
Yeah, of course. What they do with all Ukrainian kids, any age kids, so they already put them to Russian system of education. So they have this national patriotic lessons, and they tell kids that you are part of big Russia, and they started immediately, right after they bring kids. From next day, you're going to Russian school, you should speak in Russian, you should do all the Russian patriotic stuff. So Russians are very aggressive with that. So they're doing it right from next day. And if they try to speak Ukrainian, if they have Ukrainian book or something, they were punished for that.
How punished?
According to girls, what they told us, they had some other boys, teenagers, who were singing Ukrainian songs. And they said that some military people came to them and bring them to some hole on the ground, and they
Like a basement?
I don't even think that it was basement. It was like, they digged hole.
Yeah.
And they beat them. They thought that they had like some on their faces. It was done by Russian militaries, and they just showed that teenagers who wanted to be Ukrainians, they showed them, they explained them that you will go to jail, or after so that, how to say this, educational moment.
You mean brainwashing?
Something like that. And I don't think that many teenagers, kids might resist. They don't want to be beaten. They have no parents around. They have no relatives around. So they're absolutely in hands of Russian propaganda, of Russian militaries, of Russian educational system. So I don't think even that girls, they looked like they wanted to resist. They had arguments with Russian teachers. But I think in some months, in the end, they would be part of Russian educational system. And our journalist found that girls and told them, okay, we can help you.
I do remember, because I saw the documentary, and I do remember when you try to talk to different agencies and try to find out what to do, how to save those two girls who were quite desperate, quite unhappy at the place where they were living, and how they were living, and how they were forced to sing the Russian anthem and pretty much becoming Russians. And how you talk to the agencies, and everyone is saying, like, we can't do anything. And then, there's just your voice, not your face, saying, well, if there is no one who can do anything, it must be us.
Yeah, it was a little bit activism, but we already, we were at situation, we were never prepared as professional journalists, because when we're doing classical investigations, we knew how to communicate with officials, how to communicate with criminals, how to save journalists before publishing, story after publishing. I had a lot of security training, so I understand what to do with that. But when you deal with humans in their lives, and especially kids, you had no trainings to how to deal with that. So we found them, we asked them to take pictures, videos of place they live, and they recorded everything for us. But of course we decided that we will publish that only after they will come back. We already felt responsibility for them as journalists, because we asked them as source to record some stuff. It's not possible to record by journalists what's going on there with kids.
Could you just take me what was on your mind when you decided to help them, to break all the journalistic rules, to be observer and become part of the story?
We talked a lot in our editorial meetings. We talked if we are just journalists, because I'm very strong with professional standards, because I don't want to be activist. I'm a journalist, and I want that my organization will be just journalistic organization. And we talked, okay, they are our sources in very hard place, in very bad place, in very hard circumstances. So we just tried, what was my motivation, how I explained it for myself. We tried to save our source, our young, brave sources who just did stuff, very dangerous stuff for them. At that time, and now as well, it was very hard to get information what's really going on in occupation. And we decided to do it by ourselves.
So you pretty much decided to bring the girls home.
Yeah, it was like 4 days trip with few buses. And the hardest stuff was to cross border between Russia and Estonia, I believe, or
That was a long trip.
Of course. because it's not possible to cross because it's front line there. We have no border, it's front line. So they had to go through all the Russia, then to some, it was Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania, Poland, and then come to Ukraine. So it was 4-day trip. And in every moment they were recording video for our journalists, and they told some drivers and others that they are going for the marriage of some of their relatives, and our journalist legend was that our journalist is their auntie. So, and they called her like auntie, like we are on our way. For us, it was very scary because one of girl was 17. According to law in Russia, in Ukraine, kids under 18 should cross border with parents. But fortunately, somehow, it happened.
So there was a happy end.
It was happy end, but not a lot of cases with happy end. Many Ukrainian kids are still in Russia, and they are smaller, and they don't have social networks, and we don't know how to save them, how to bring them back, and situation in general really sad.
Would you do it again?
In general, no. I mean, if we start working on stories like that, and I will feel better, don't work on stories like that, because that finished good. But if because of us some kids got more trouble than they were, it would be hard for me to live with that. Better no, I wouldn't do that.
If you would need to choose, and you may get into this position if you are, investigative reporter writing about Ukraine, but doing damage to Ukraine by revealing corruption in the army, mishandling of the, military aid from the West. Or you wouldn't report on it and be the good citizen and, trying to, let the army problems to be resolved by the army. What would you choose?
I already chose. I mean, we had a lot of discussions in the beginning of the war. If we will know something bad about army, about corruption during the war, would we report? I told my journalists and I told myself that we will report. And in the beginning, we had for first year of the war, even our sources, which we had before the war, they kept silence. They said, let's talk after the war. We have some stuff to tell, but after the war. Because in first months, we believed that it will finish soon and we will have time to report about it, to investigate that. But then we figure out that it's for a long time. And if we will close eyes what's going on, we will just lose the country. And I think around 1 year, first year of the war, we almost didn't report about corruption. And it was problem to obtain proofs. But when we start obtaining documents or start researching for databases and found some bad stuff about government, about army, we start publishing. Because I still think that better to have many small scandals than very big scandal in the end, which might collapse the state, the country. I don't believe in keeping silence, hide important stuff, and then we will pretend that nothing happened. I mean, for me, it doesn't work this way. Yeah, it's hard time, it's war, but part of the victory, part of successful, end of this war, this part on our government, on our people. And when we start to figure out that people decided to buy expensive apartments for $1 million or just leave country legally, going to Maldives or somewhere using state money for their own, for their own private stuff, we realized that we should publish that. because that people had more responsibility than other Ukrainians. That's why we should look at them if they do good housekeeping during hard time. Being investigative journalists, you always enemy for the country and for some people. It's harder situation, yeah, but we are journalists. And if it's important, if people should know about that, they should know, even hard stuff.
How do you see that, the new challenges of your job, the new transformations of your job as investigative reporter? What do you expect? What do you predict?
It's hard to predict anything at that situation, but of course we will investigate. We always will investigate everything. But then a few months ago, I realized that the end of the war will open harder times. I mean, we should prepare, have energy, have people, have money from somewhere after the war, because, many people were killed, many people went crazy and will go crazy because it's very hard to live in that kind of stress. And what I predict that it will be a lot of bad politicians who came back, bad people who just who just went to Monaco or somewhere during the war, and then they come back to Ukraine and start to build Ukraine. And we as journalists need to look into them very, very carefully, and we need to have energy for that. What we see now, it's pretty pessimistic scenarios for Ukraine and for the world as well. I mean, as I understand, many people preparing to the third war, and I'm a little bit afraid that in this big stuff which might happen, everybody just forget about Ukraine, and we will be just territory with just territory under Russian territory, no one interested in. So unfortunately, no optimistic scenarios now, but somehow I believe I really want to live in Ukraine. I want my kids to live in Ukraine, and that's why I need to work hard as journalist and doing everything I learned before as journalist and just doing my good job. It's only one way to survive and to have some hope.